Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a file that sits right at this really uncomfortable intersection of archaeology, geopolitics, and what I can really only describe as high-octane thriller logic.
Yeah, it's quite the ride.
It really is, because we're looking at a location that people have been absolutely obsessed with for millennia. We're talking about a mission profile that is technically impossible, and a cast of characters that honestly sounds like the setup for a really weird joke.
I mean, it really does. You have
Mm.
a billionaire fundamentalist, an ex-Navy SEAL mercenary,
Yeah.
magically empowered archaeologist, an ex-communist journalist, and a rabbi.
Right.
And they're all just walking right into an active war zone,
And they are walking into that war zone to find a boat,
supposedly.
supposedly a boat, or more specifically, a structure that really just shouldn't be there at all. We are taking you to the mountains of eastern Turkey today. We are doing a deep dive into the source material surrounding the Ararat anomaly.
And, this is one of those topics that usually gets relegated to, like late-night conspiracy radio.
Oh, absolutely.
But the source material we're analyzing today, these excerpts from the record paradox, it treats the whole thing with this gritty, granular realism that is honestly kind of jarring. We aren't talking about grainy photos of Bigfoot here.
No.
We're talking about a very specific, highly coordinated, completely illegal paramilitary operation to climb Mount Ararat.
So let's start with the target itself, just to give you all a baseline for those of you who maybe haven't spent your entire lives lurking on conspiracy forums.
Yeah.
What exactly is the Ararat anomaly?
So geographically speaking, we're looking at Mount Ararat. It is a massive volcanic cone in eastern Turkey, and it rises to an elevation of nearly 17,000 feet.
That's huge.
It's massive, and it is permanently capped in snow and glacial ice. Now, for decades, going back to about 1949, various reconnaissance flights, we're talking the CIA, the Air Force, satellite imagery, they have all picked up this disturbance.
A disturbance.
Right, in the northwest corner of the Western Plateau. It's a shape.
Yeah, the text describes it as vaguely ship-shaped.
Exactly. It's dark, it's distinct from the surrounding rock and ice, and it is hanging quite precariously right over a sheer abyss.
And the dimensions are massive. And because of where it's located, it's practically impossible to get to.
Right. And because of that specific shape, a certain segment of the population jumps to one very specific conclusion.
Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark. Because Genesis 8:4 states that the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. So if you are a biblical literalist, this dark smudge on the satellite photo isn't just a rock. It is proof.
Right?
It's the smoking gun of their theology.
But if you ask geologists...
If you ask geologists, it's a basalt extrusion. It's just a volcanic rock formation that happens to look like a boat when the shadows hit it at the right angle. Or maybe it's a trick of the glacial melt.
So that is the central mystery we're dealing with today. Is it a rock, or is it a 4,000-year-old barge frozen in the ice? But today, we aren't really just debating the geology of it all. We are analyzing the human effort to go up there and find out.
And this is where the deep dive gets really wild. Because the mission profile detailed in these documents is just staggering.
It's a total logistical nightmare.
It is. Just think about the layers of difficulty here. Layer 1 is the physical mountain itself, 17,000 feet. Weather that can kill you instantly, avalanches, glacial crevasses everywhere.
And layer 2?
Layer 2 is the geopolitics. Eastern Turkey is not exactly a tourist destination right now. This is the heart of the conflict between the Turkish state and Kurdish separatists.
Right, it's an active war zone.
Exactly. There is a heavy, active military presence. The Turkish government absolutely does not want people wandering around up there.
Especially not a bunch of Americans carrying heavy digging equipment.
Absolutely not. So to get there, you can't just buy a climbing permit. You have to break the law. You need to bypass the military or bribe them. You have to smuggle in tons of gear. You basically need a team that is willing to risk imprisonment or death before their boots even touch the snow.
Which perfectly brings us to the cast. Because if you were trying to build a team for some crazy heist movie, this is exactly who you would pick. But these are the real people detailed in our source text.
They are.
Let's break them down. Because understanding who is actually on this mountain is key to understanding the total disaster that unfolds later. And I think we have to start with our protagonist, the lens through which we actually see this whole world, Annja Creed.
Annja is such a fascinating contradiction. Because on the surface, if you just pulled up her resume, you would see a legitimate archaeologist who is totally sold out.
Yeah, she hosts a TV show,
She hosts a show called Chasing History's Monsters.
which, I'm not gonna lie, sounds exactly like the kind of show I would binge watch at 2 in the morning.
Oh, for sure. It's pure infotainment.
Hmm?
She goes around investigating cryptids, star children, alien hybrids. She openly refers to it as fluff.
Yeah, and she has this producer, Doug Morrell, who the text points out has the attention span of a midge. He's just all about the ratings.
Right. But Annja is using the money from this ridiculous TV show
Yeah.
to fund her actual passion, which is real history. She loves the dirt. The text specifically says she has this atavistic joy of the hunt.
But there is something else about Anja, something that violently shifts the genre of this story from a standard political thriller into something, well, something else entirely. The source material is incredibly specific about the special qualification she possesses.
Yes. And I want to be clear for you listening.
Oh,
We have to treat this as a stated fact within the context of the source material. Annja Creed is the bearer of Joan of Arc's sword.
okay, let's just pause on that for a second. We're not talking about some old museum piece that she keeps in a glass display case in her apartment.
No, we are not. This is an actual metaphysical burden. The text explains that the sword exists in another plane entirely.
Yeah.
It is not physically strapped to her back or anything. But if the need is great, like if she is in physical danger, she can summon it. It simply appears in her hand. And holding it grants her certain supernatural abilities.
Well, like what? Does it make her a superhero?
Not exactly a superhero. It's described more as a heightened state of physical competence. It grants her the skills of a master warrior.
Okay.
Her balance becomes perfect. Her reaction times are drastically enhanced. She instinctively knows how to fight and survive, even though she hasn't technically spent her life training in martial arts.
But, and I absolutely love this detail from the source text, that perfect balance has a very funny loophole.
It does. It does not work on ice skates.
That is just such a beautifully specific, humanizing flaw.
It really is, and it's actually crucial to how the character is introduced. The text opens with her at the skating rink in Montreal. She is literally the magical warrior chosen by destiny, and she is sprawling on the ice like a rag doll.
She just can't skate to save her life.
No, she keeps blaming it on the lack of friction.
Which is such a great segue to the man who is standing there watching her fall down over and over again, Rue.
Yes, Rue. If Annja is the warrior of this story, Rue is the wizard. But he doesn't look like an old wizard. He looks like a very skinny, exceptionally well-dressed septuagenarian.
Right.
And officially, he claims to be Annja's business manager.
But he also claims a much, much longer resume than just managing her TV contracts.
He does. He claims to have been Joan of Arc's original protector and mentor. He tells her he has lived for over 5 centuries.
And Annja, who we just established is a serious scientist and a major skeptic, she actually believes him.
She does. And she believes him because she has seen him do things that are physically impossible for a normal human, let alone an old man. In this very skating scene, while Annja is falling all over the place, Rue is described as gliding like a dolphin in water.
Yeah.
He's doing pirouettes. He's skating literal circles around her, completely mocking her lack of form.
And while he is showing off like this, he is just dropping these incredibly casual history bombs. This is the part that really hooked me on their dynamic.
Right. He starts lecturing her about the weather cycles. He casually mentions the Little Ice Age. He literally says to her, "I don't understand you moderns. I lived through the Little Ice Age. When it got cold, people suffered. When it got warm, prosperity returned."
That is such an incredible power move. He isn't citing a textbook he read. He is citing his own personal memories of the 1600s.
Exactly. It establishes his absolute authority. He views vast stretches of history as current events. But he didn't drag her out to the skating rink just to humiliate her on the ice. He brought her there to pitch a job.
The Ararat job.
Yes. He tells her that a consortium of very wealthy American fundamentalists wants her to direct an archaeological excavation on Mount Ararat.
And Annja's reaction is, well, let's just say it's less than enthusiastic.
It is a hard, fast no, and she lists her reasons immediately. 1, she says the anomaly is just a rock. 2, she considers biblical literalists to be the arch enemies of anthropology.
Right, because they tend to destroy or ignore science just to fit their dogma.
Exactly. And her third reason is that the Turkish military will either arrest them or shoot them on sight. She essentially calls it a suicide mission for a fairy tale.
So how does Rue, a guy who's been around for 500 years and presumably knows exactly how human psychology works, how does he convince her? Because he doesn't offer her a massive paycheck.
No, money doesn't drive Annja at all. Instead, he directly attacks her identity as a scientist. He looks at her and asks, "Where's your spirit of scientific inquiry?" Yeah. He argues that absent actual investigation, she is just guessing. He tells her she is being just as dogmatically blind as the fundamentalists by completely dismissing it without even looking at the evidence.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And then he drops the real hook. He says, even if it isn't Noah's Ark, if there is any man-made structure at 17,000 feet in the ice.
That would easily be the archaeological discovery of the millennium.
Exactly. Who could have possibly built a structure at the top of a frozen volcano in the Bronze Age? And why would they do it? That purely historical mystery completely overrides the politics for her. He essentially traps her with her own intellectual curiosity.
So she agrees to at least go and meet the money guys. And this transition in the text is incredibly jarring. We go from this cold, kind of playful atmosphere of the ice skating rink in Montreal to a very different kind of cold, the Penthouse restaurant in New York City.
The atmosphere they describe here is just heavy. It's spare decor, wildly expensive views of Manhattan, and sitting on the tables are these long-stemmed roses that the text specifically notes are the color of fresh spilled blood. It completely sets the stage for the antagonists.
Let's talk about the man actually writing the checks for this operation, Charles Bostitch, also known as Charlie.
Charlie Bostitch is an absolute force of nature. He is described as being 6'4", crowding 300 pounds. He looks like an ex-linebacker who kind of went to seed.
Yeah.
He comes from Oklahoma oil money, and he has expanded that empire into agribusiness and defense contracting.
But he is not just a rich guy looking for a tax write-off. He is a true believer.
He is a late-in-life convert. He was apparently quite the party animal in his youth, but he found Jesus later on. And like a lot of people who convert later in life, he is intensely zealous. The text says he advocates for muscular right-wing Christianity. In fact, he founded something called the Rehoboam Christian Leadership Academy.
Muscular Christianity. That phrase really does a lot of heavy lifting in the text. It implies that his faith isn't just about quiet, personal prayer. It is about imposition. It's about displaying strength.
Precisely. Now, we want to be completely impartial here. We are just analyzing what the source text presents. But the text makes it clear that his motivation for funding this dangerous trip isn't scientific curiosity. It was pure validation. He wants to prove the exact, literal truth of the Bible, specifically the book of Genesis. He genuinely believes that if he can drag a piece of the ark down from that mountain, he will instantly silence every skeptic, every scientist, and every atheist on Earth. He views this as a way to win the culture war with one single stroke.
But a guy like Bostitch knows he can't pull off a covert paramilitary operation in Turkey by himself. He needs an enforcer. Which brings us to Leif Barron.
Leif Barron is probably the scariest person in this entire narrative. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. And he's the owner of a company called China Grove Consultants.
Which is a very polite corporate way of saying mercenaries.
He prefers the term private security contractors. But the text gives us a truly terrifying insight into his larger business plan. His firm is actively lobbying the United Nations to privatize global peacekeeping.
Wow.
He wants to replace the UN Blue Helmets with for-profit corporate soldiers.
That gives you such a deep insight into the privatization of war. I mean, if peacekeeping literally becomes a for-profit business model, does peace ever actually pay?
That is the exact underlying question the text raises. Barron is brought in to be the expediter. He is the guy who arranges the massive bribes, handles the covert logistics, and supplies the guns. He and Bostitch have this very dark, symbiotic relationship. Bostitch provides the endless funding and the moral cover for the operation, and Barron provides the capacity for extreme violence.
So they sit down with Annja at this penthouse, and they pitch her. They tell her the anomaly on Ararat is definitively the Ark. Annja, being the professional she is, asks for proof. What do they actually bring to the table?
Honestly, not much. They have a piece of wood.
Just a piece of wood.
It is very old, dark wood. It was supposedly recovered from the site by a previous expedition. They had it carbon dated, and it dates to just under 3,500 years old. And Larry Tate, who is Bostitch's young legal aid, he jumps in and points out that according to their specific biblical timeline, the Great Flood happened in 1447 BC. So he argues the date perfectly fits.
Okay, I'll play devil's advocate here for a second. Finding a piece of 3,500-year-old carved wood lying around on a glacier at 17,000 feet is genuinely weird.
It is weird. But Annja points out the fatal scientific flaw immediately. The wood was found lying loose on the surface of the ice.
Right.
And context is absolutely everything in proper archaeology. If an artifact is loose on the surface, anyone could have carried it up there at any point in history. Or it could be debris from a much later, completely unrelated structure. It absolutely does not prove that a massive ship is buried inside the ice.
So she naturally asks them to show her photos of the structure.
And she gets the classic pseudoscience excuse. Equipment malfunctions. They show her these incredibly blurry, useless cell phone pictures.
It is literally always equipment malfunctions.
It's the classic Bigfoot problem. Barron tries to claim that the extreme weather and the supposed magnetic anomalies on the mountain mess with all their digital gear. Annja's incredibly skeptical. She quickly realizes they are basically asking her to risk her entire career and her life on a hunch.
And this is exactly the moment where she realizes the true danger of what they are proposing. Because Larry Tate casually mentions that talking to any of the members of that previous expedition would be inadvisable.
Which is heavily coded language for they are either dead or they are hiding from the government. Annja realizes this isn't just a risky dig, it is a massive criminal enterprise. So she says no. She turns them down flat and actually leaves the dinner.
But the story obviously doesn't end there, because there was one other person sitting at that table in the penthouse, a man who completely did not fit in with the billionaire or the mercenary, the rabbi.
Rabbi Levi Leibovitz. He is without a doubt my favorite character in this entire dossier. He basically embodies the paradox mentioned in the title.
Give us a picture of him. How does the text describe him?
He is everything Charlie Bostitch is not. He is described as floppy, incredibly nerdy, and deeply socially awkward. During this intense, high-stakes dinner with these dangerous men, he is basically ignoring them to read biblical archaeology online on his e-reader, and he wears a yarmulke that constantly keeps sliding off the back of his head.
And he has a very specific, quirky way of ordering his food.
Right. He orders wonton soup, but he specifically asks for no noodles. He does it because he figured out that if you tell them no noodles, they give you extra wontons. It is a fantastic little detail because it shows he is actually very pragmatic. He strictly follows his dietary laws, but he knows exactly how to work the system to get what he wants.
So Annja goes home and actually runs a background check on him. I think she fully expects him to be just another religious fanatic on Bostitch's payroll.
But she finds out he is the real deal. He is an absolute genius. He's a world-class linguist, an expert in ancient Middle Eastern languages. He's a homeboy from Brooklyn who is actually highly respected in purely secular academic circles.
So the obvious question is, why on earth is a respected academic teaming up with a bunch of fundamentalists who want to prove the literal truth of Genesis?
That is the exact conversation that ends up changing Annja's mind. They meet up in Chinatown the next day, and Levi is incredibly blunt with her. He tells her straight out that he is not a biblical literalist. He personally views the stories of the flood and the Garden of Eden as profound allegories, not history.
Wait, so he doesn't even believe the boat is up there?
No, not at all. And he gives her this brilliant, concise little lecture on textual criticism. He explains how these ancient texts were originally copied by hand. Often they were copied by illiterate artisans who didn't even know how to read the language. They were literally just drawing the shapes of letters they didn't understand.
Wow, that's fascinating.
He uses that historical fact to completely dismantle the idea of Bible codes or perfect literal inerrancy, because the physical text itself is full of entirely human copying errors.
This is such a crucial insight for the narrative. He completely separates his deep religious faith from literalism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, and this is the absolute key to his character, he tells her that he firmly believes the anomaly is something real. He is convinced it is a human construct. And he argues that if human beings managed to build something that massive at 17,000 feet over 3,000 years ago, it is of inestimable historical value. He simply has to know what it is.
So he is driven purely by the historical mystery, not by Bostitch's dogma.
Right. And he's also driven by a very human sense of vulnerability. He openly admits to Annja that he is terrified of going up that mountain. He tells her he's a man of books, not a mountaineer. And he essentially pleads with her, saying he figures he'll be all right if he can just stick close to her.
That is actually really sweet and also terrifying. He is basically putting his life completely in her hands.
And it works. Annja sees his profound intellectual honesty, and she sees his complete innocence regarding the danger he's in. She decides she cannot let this kind, brilliant man go up onto that glacier alone with a pack of wolves. So she agrees to join the team, mostly to protect the rabbi.
So the team is finally set. They fly across the world to Turkey. And the harsh reality of what they're doing hits them square in the face. We transition from the theoretical, polite danger of a New York restaurant to the very real, immediate danger of Ankara.
We find them sitting in a conference room at the Sheraton Hotel in Ankara. The text paints this great sensory picture. It's freezing cold from the heavy air conditioning, but the air in the room is just thick and blue with heavy cigarette smoke.
Because General Orhan Orga is there, and he clearly does not care about hotel smoking policies.
General Orga is the representative of the Turkish military, and this entire scene is vital for understanding the incredibly thin political tightrope this expedition is walking. Orga is a strict secularist. In the context of Turkey, as the text presents it, the military has historically positioned itself as the guardian of secularism against rising Islamist political movements.
So theoretically, General Orga and Charlie Bostich are natural ideological enemies.
Completely. And Bostich, trying to be a diplomat, completely fumbles it. He's trying to butter the general up, so he starts praising the strict separation of church and state in Turkey.
Which is incredibly hypocritical, considering Bostich is dedicating his life and fortune to destroying the separation of church and state back in America.
Exactly. And the general is no fool. He sees right through the hypocrisy instantly. But the general has a much more pressing, immediate problem than American religious politics. He is dealing with the Kurds.
Let's unpack the Kurdish conflict a bit, because why is this so central to their ability to climb a mountain? Again, keeping our neutral lens on the source material.
Mount Ararat sits directly in Kurdish territory. The Kurdish people in that region have been fighting a long, bloody conflict for autonomy. Now, the text highlights the complex political reality here. The United States actively supports certain Kurdish groups as allies in places like Iraq. But the Turkish government views those same Kurdish separatist groups as dangerous terrorists. So General Orga is sitting across the table from this heavily armed group of Americans, and he is deeply, deeply suspicious of them. He openly resents them. He essentially accuses them of playing both sides, telling them they found a use for the terrorist services.
He suspects the Americans are secretly funding or arming the separatists.
Exactly. But ultimately, in this world, cash is king. Barron heavily implies that massive, quiet bribes have already been deposited into the right accounts to smooth things over. So the general reluctantly agrees to look the other way and help them, officially doing it for science. But it is a remarkably fragile alliance.
And while the leaders of this expedition are sitting there trading thinly veiled insults and bribes, Annja is quietly observing the rest of the team they brought along, the group she internally dubs the Wolf Pack.
These are all hand-picked graduates of Bostich's Rehoboam Academy. They're all young men, they're very polite, very well-dressed, but Annja immediately picks up on this intense pack mentality. They are highly disciplined, but underneath that veneer, they exude this raw, aggressive energy.
And what about Larry Tate, the eager young lawyer who's at the dinner?
Larry is fascinating. Annja initially thinks of him as the floppy dog of the group. He's always eager, always grinning, constantly pumping people's hands. But as she watches him in Ankara, she realizes the clumsiness is actually a bit of a cultivated act.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's incredibly competent. He knows every logistical detail. He is a true fanatic believer in Bostich's cause. But he is sharp as a tack.
Now, there is one final member of this bizarre circus we need to introduce, and he is the cynic of the group, Robin Wilfork.
Wilfork is an amazing addition to the cast. He largely represents the audience's natural skepticism, I think. He is a journalist from New Zealand, and the text notes he is very proud to be a Kiwi. Do not make the mistake of calling him Australian.
Right, and we find him sitting in the hotel bar drinking gin and tonics.
Naturally. And his personal resume makes his presence on this trip incredibly confusing. He's a former communist, he is a staunch atheist, and he built his entire journalistic career severely criticizing men exactly like Bostich and Barron.
Yeah, the text says he publicly called Barron's private security forces murderers in print.
He did. So Annja sits down with him and asks the obvious question.
Yeah.
Why on earth is he on their payroll? Why did Bostich hire his own worst, most vocal critic to cover the expedition?
And it turns out to be a brilliant, highly calculated PR strategy.
It really is. Wilfork explains the logic to Annja perfectly. He says, look, if Charlie Bostich comes down from that mountain and announces to the press that he found Noah's Ark, half the world will just laugh at him.
Of course.
But if the famous atheist, ex-communist, highly critical journalist Robin Wilfork comes down and says they found it, well, the entire world will have to listen. Bostich is buying Wilfork's established objectivity.
And why does Wilfork actually accept the job? Just for the paycheck?
The money is a huge factor, sure, but he also describes it as a form of revenge. He feels that by taking their massive paycheck to go up there and ultimately write the absolute truth, which he assumes will be that there is no boat, he is maintaining his integrity while draining their bank accounts.
It's a very cynical, very practical mindset.
It is. But he uses this quiet moment in the bar to give Annja a very serious warning.
Right, the warning about Leif Barron.
Woolfolk tells her that Barron is not just some private sector contractor who hires out muscle. He strongly implies that Barron has deep, ongoing connections to the CIA and high-level black ops.
Yeah.
He reveals that Barron has already read highly classified dossiers on Annja. Barron knows absolutely everything about her background, her skills, her secrets.
That really chills the mood of the entire scene. It forcefully reminds the audience that Annja isn't just managing a difficult archaeological dig. She is a pawn on a very dangerous geopolitical chessboard.
And Woolfolk leaves her with one final thought. He warns her that in this specific part of the world, feeling safe is an illusion. He tells her point blank that General Orda's promises of protection will mean absolutely nothing once the shooting actually starts.
And the shooting. Well, the extreme physical danger definitely starts. Because the source material provides a vivid flash forward, we suddenly jump to the team actually making the climb on the mountain.
Section 6 of the text. The climb. This is the moment where all the theoretical debate in penthouses and hotel bars is completely crushed by physical reality. They are high up on Ararat, and they are caught in a sudden, brutal storm. The text describes ominous boiling clouds rolling in.
The description here is incredibly visceral. You can feel the wind and the freezing cold, and we immediately see the group dynamics starting to break down under the pressure.
Rabbi Levi, the brilliant scholar, is failing. He is physically completely out of his depth. He's literally twisting helplessly in the climbing ropes, and Annja has to physically intervene and stabilize him, fulfilling her earlier promise in Chinatown to protect him.
But the truly unsettling detail in the scene is Larry Tate.
Oh, Larry is the creepiest part of the climb. While everyone else is freezing and terrified, Larry is completely in his element. Annja looks over and sees him silhouetted against this deadly storm, and he is grinning.
Just a manic, euphoric grin in the middle of a blizzard.
Yes, because for him, the physical danger validates the holy mission. In his mind, this deadly storm is just the devil actively trying to stop them from revealing the truth. The harder it gets, the more it proves they are close to God. For Larry, freezing to death on a rope is a profound religious experience.
And then the storm breaks. The clouds finally part.
The team scrambles up onto this massive, sloping plain of glacial ice. They can see the true summit of the volcano about 1.5 miles ahead of them. But that's not what they're looking at, because just a 1/4 mile ahead, hanging out over the sheer abyss,
They finally see it.
they see the anomaly. It is not a rumor anymore. It is not a glitch on a radar screen. It is a massive, dark, undeniably ship-shaped mound frozen solidly into the ancient glacier.
That moment in the text, it just changes the gravity of everything.
It absolutely does, because in that single second, it completely validates Rue's pitch. It validates Bostitch's insane investment. It validates all the incredible risks they just took to get past the Turkish military. There is actually something massive up there.
So the excerpt effectively leaves us standing right there on that icy ridge with them. We have visually confirmed that the target is real, but they haven't actually touched it yet.
And that is the ultimate cliffhanger of reality. We know the anomaly exists, but we still have absolutely no idea what it actually is.
Let's try to synthesize all of this. We have a heavily armed team comprised of people who fundamentally hate each other's worldviews. We've got fundamentalists, atheists, secular generals, and mystics.
Right.
They are trapped at 17,000 feet in the middle of an active geopolitical war zone, and they have just found the impossible object.
But finding it was only step 1 of the mission profile. Now they actually have to excavate it from the ice. And while they do that, they have to survive the deadly elements, they have to survive the Turkish army, they have to survive the Kurdish separatists, and, perhaps most dangerously of all, they have to survive whatever Leif Barron's true hidden agenda is.
It really brings us right back to that pivotal question Rue asked Annja at the skating rink. Where is your spirit of scientific inquiry?
That really is the core engine driving this whole narrative.
Yeah.
Because underneath all the heavy politics, underneath the religious warfare and the mercenary agendas, there is this fundamental, undeniable human need to simply know. We see a strange shape hidden in the mist, and we just have to know what it is, even if finding out might kill us.
And think about the piece of wood they already found. The fact that it carbon dated to 3,500 years old.
The historical implications of that alone are staggering. If the structure in the ice isn't Noah's Ark, that means some unknown Bronze Age civilization managed to haul thousands of tons of heavy timber up the side of a freezing, deadly volcano.
Exactly. Why would they do that? Was it meant to be a temple? Was it a high-altitude fortress? Or a refuge from some ancient disaster?
It strongly suggests there's an entire chapter of human history that we have completely, totally lost.
Or maybe it's a profound myth that we have completely misunderstood for millennia.
That's a great way to look at it.
And that is the exact thought I want to leave you with today as we wrap up. We so often think of human history as the settled, completely mapped out thing. But up there, buried deep in the glacial ice, is something huge that simply does not fit into our neat little boxes. And sometimes the anomalies, the things that absolutely don't fit, are the only things that truly matter.
It's a mystery that actively fights back against anyone trying to solve it.
It really is. Thank you for taking this incredibly intense deep dive into the freezing snows of Ararat with us today.
It was my absolute pleasure.
Stay curious, stay skeptical, and maybe, just maybe, try to stay off any illegal mercenary expeditions into active war zones. We will see you all next time.